Okay, let's just dive right in here. My name is Janine Madura. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Technology Advisors. And with me today is Trevor Walker, our Infor CRM expert. He's going to walk us through some administration information today and training. We're a small group today, so if you have any questions, you can, of course, feel free to unmute yourself to ask a question. Or if you're more comfortable chatting, I'll be monitoring that chat so I can look into those questions for you as well. I will be recording this and we'll make sure that you get any assets related to it after the event. So I want to hand it over to Trevor to get us started.
Oh, thank you. And hello, yes, I'm Trevor Walker with Technology Advisors. I work with Infor CRM here. And yep, we'll just be looking at some general Infor CRM administration information. We're going to take a look today at teams, security, and roles, and then sort of applying all that to creating a new user and giving them some of those permissions. We'll also take a look at setting up a group and sharing that out with some of your users, and add a new feature that came out in the most recent update of Infor CRM 8.4 that might be useful for users that may want to see the example we'll do is their activities for this week. We'll also take a look at the pick lists, updating the list of values in certain fields in CRM. Okay, we'll be going over the web client administration, and in the current versions of Infor CRM, pretty much anything you need to do for administration can be done in the web client. There's a few things, and we'll also take a look at the administrator program that's installed on the CRM server. There's a few things that you can still only do in there, like if you need to add a new license. And there's a few things that are a little easier to do, or maybe just quicker, such as looking at your team setup. If you need to add many users to many teams, that's sometimes a little easier to do in there. So we'll take a look at that. Okay, so we'll start in here with the administration area in Infor CRM. I'm going to log in as the admin user. That's the out-of-the-box user that comes with the system. It automatically has all rights to see everything in CRM. You can give users the administration role. It will also let them do whatever we're going to do here. You just can't make them sort of the exact equal of the admin user that can just inherently see and do everything. So occasionally you'll still need to log in as admin. All right, whoopsie. So we're going to take a look at the administration area. We're going to go over office profiles a little bit later on. We'll look at the teams, security manager, the roles, and create a new user with all that. And then we'll take a look at the pick list later on. So first we're going to look at the teams, security, and roles. Teams are the records that a user has access to. Security manager, or the field level security, or what fields in those records that a user has access and what sort of access they have. And then the roles, which are what a user can do with the records that they have access to. We'll start off here with teams. These are the records that a user can see in the system. It's related to the owner field on an account, and then that owner of the account affects all of its related records, like the contacts, opportunities, etc. Teams can be made up of users, departments, or other teams. And we'll take a look at the administrator program that if you have sort of a complex team setup, it can be easier to sort of visualize who's all on that team, and can be quicker to add multiple users to many teams if you're setting it up for the first time or just sort of doing a organization realignment. Well, back here in CRM, we'll go into the administration area, open the teams. So here's a list of teams that we have in this in my test environment here. They're all sort of named after regions. Now let's take a look at the Midwest team. And like I said, the team is related to the owner field on an account. So any of these users, we open an account here. So this account is owned by the Midwest team that we were just looking at. Any users who are in the Midwest team will have the ability to see this account and its related records, like its contacts, opportunities, etc. Any user who's not on the Midwest team won't be able to see this account. And back to the team itself. So these are all the users and the departments that are under the team. User that we've added, directly here, like Lee. A department is a collection of users. So instead of adding those individually, we can just add the department itself. The security profile that we'll take a look at in a second, that determines sort of at a field level what fields a user can either see or not see, or just has read-only access to, again, based on the team that they're under. And we'll go on to the server just so we can see, again, if you have a more complicated team layout, sometimes it's easier to do this in the administrator program that's installed usually on your CRM server. It can also be installed locally on your machine. Just go into the administrator. Log in again as the admin user. And here we see the list of users that we have in the system. Everything in here is the same as what's in the web client, just in a different view. We'll go over here to Teams. Again, same list of teams that we had before. If we expand Midwest, we can see that we have the same setup. So Lee Hogan is a user that's directly on the team. And this inside sales department is also there. And in here, you can expand that to see who is under that. So Barb is not directly in Midwest, but since she's in the inside sales department, she also has access to see all the records that are owned by Midwest. Okay, we'll take a look at the security manager or field level security. This determines what fields in the records a user has access to, what field, each field in the table that has the security enabled. And in each of those fields, they could have read write, read only, or no access. And again, this is another thing that you can definitely do in the web client, depending on how much you're going to do with it. It can be a little quicker to do it in the administrator program, and it's a little easier to see sometimes too. So that's, again, this item here. We'll go into the security manager. Get rid of those. Okay, along the top are the different profiles that are in the system. There's by default the read write, read only, which means that users can see all the data in the fields, but they can't change any of it. And then there's a few other ones. The main difference between read write and team owner is that the team owner can change the owner of an account that's owned by everyone. Out of the box, they're otherwise the same. So this is all of the tables in the system that have field level security enabled. So here's the account table, and then all of the fields within that table. So let's say for some reason we wanted to make it so that everybody with this security profile can see the main phone number of an account, but they can't actually change it. Now let's scroll down here and find main phone. So this is the main phone number of an account. And over here are the options for that field. So they can read write, read only, or have no access. In that case, they would just see a blank field there and not actually the data within it. So I've gone ahead and changed this main phone to read only. So if we log in as a user rather than the admin, who's able to see accounts owned by that Midwest team. If we go into the account screen, open up one of these accounts, you'll see that the main phone number here is grayed out, so you can see the data, but you can't actually change anything like you can on these other fields. I can say it is in the web client. It's just kind of a big long list of fields here for every table in the system. This is another thing that sometimes is a little easier to do back here in the administrator program. We go to manage field security profiles, and that read write that we were looking at. And you can just see in here, it's just a little easier to see. Got sort of the tree view, so you can expand and collapse each of the tables, anything for accounts, anything for contacts, etc. And if we expand that out, we can scroll down and see that the main phone that we've made read only. And we can turn it back to read write. We can give no access, which means if somebody logs in, that field's just going to show up as blank. Roles. Roles determine what a user can do with the records that they have access to. For example, if they can or cannot add an account, delete an account, or edit an account. And we'll take a look at this in a second. One that occasionally gets turned off is the ability to export data to Excel. Sometimes they don't want the users to be able to directly export all the data. Roles are sort of additive or cumulative. If you want to give someone the administrator role, you would also give them the standard role so that those different permissions sort of add on top of the existing roles. And this is something that's only available in the web client. This does not apply to the Windows client or the administrator program. We'll go back in here. Into the roles section. So here are the out-of-the-box roles that come with the system. We'll take a look at standard user. So when we give someone the standard user role, which everybody in the system needs some sort of role, and generally, this would be the one you'd start with unless you're making your own custom one. So these are all the users that have it. Roles are made up of secured actions. So these are what the role allows you to do. You can see here that standard user has ability to add an account or edit an account, or add a contact. Sorry, there's a truck backing up outside. Copy a contact, delete or edit. Now say we don't want somebody in the standard role to be able to delete a contact. So we'd go ahead and click this action here and hit remove. So now any standard user can still add a contact, edit a contact, but they can't actually delete it. Same with account has already been removed. You would have to do that for each entity that you don't want something to be deleted. So you'd have to remove it for the opportunity to delete, lead delete, etc. Another common thing that people will like to remove from the standard role is the ability to, looks like I already removed it out of this one, but the ability to export to Excel and export to a file so that somebody could export to a Excel or a CSV. So we'll go ahead and take this out of the standard user. And now if we want certain people to be able to do that, we could go ahead and make a new role, which I've already have here. You just go to administration, new role, and create this one called export to Excel. it would start off, after you create the role, you just get this information up here. Name is required, description obviously is not. Um, so it starts off with no actions, and the role itself won't do anything at this point, so we'll need to add the secured actions. Go over here, and let's just find anything that contains export. So we've got our export to Excel and export to file. So we'll go ahead and add those two. Close that. So now if we give somebody their standard role so that they can do the regular functions in the system, we can also add to that this export to Excel role, which only has these two actions, and then that just adds on top of the existing roles. If you're making a large number of changes to the standard user, like we just took out a few, the ability to delete a contact or to export. But if you're making a lot of changes, you're going to want to make your own custom standard role, because occasionally when Infor gets updated, they may modify some of the out-of-the-box roles, and that could reset your changes. All right, does anybody have any questions on the sort of general team field security or role up to this point?
Not seeing anything come in yet, Trevor, so you must be doing a good job. But I'm keeping my eye out here. So if anybody has any questions, I just realized you might actually be muted. Like
Oh, we had to hit that
you might
allow
be
to talk.
muted by default. So just toss them in the chat if any questions come up, and I'll make sure that we get to those.
Okay, there's that allow to talk button. Does that have to be?
It doesn't look like I'll keep looking for it, but I'm not seeing
Okay.
anything that enables that right now.
Alrighty, we'll just keep moving on for now. All right, next we'll make a user, but before that we'll take a look at the Office Profiles area and specifically the user password options. This is where you can set the default password for a user, the requirements for that password, and also the login attempt and how long a user gets locked out if they log in incorrectly too many times. And then also how to unlock a user who has logged in incorrectly too many times. Go up here to this Office Profiles. And generally there'll just be the one file in there. So Phoenix Computers is the demo system here. So if we go to in here you can see your licenses, but you can only add new ones within the administrator program on the server. But you can only see how many licenses you have. This security tab, we get the default password. So whenever you make a new user, this is the password that they'll have by default. You can change that to whatever you want. This is just the way that comes in the system. And we've got a few options here for the passwords. So there's the minimum password length, days until it expires, and then other options like it must contain letters and numbers. They have to change the password. Don't let them have blank passwords. And then don't allow the username as the password. A couple of things here. If you want to use the minimum password length, you have to check do not allow blank passwords. It's obviously blank would be below any minimum. And between the days until password expires or force user to change default password, you can only do one of these two. So if you force them to change the default, it'll disable the days until password expires. And over here, this is how many times they can log in until they get locked. You can set it so that they get locked out for 5 minutes, then they can try again. Or if you have it as 0 here, that means that they're locked out until somebody manually resets them. And actually, let's, as my user Lee here, log in incorrectly a few times. So if somebody does get locked out and you have it set to manually reset, or even if you have it set for 25 minutes and somebody tells you that they want back in, you can manually reset them as well. Go over here into the user section. And we'll click this users with failed logins. So we see here that Lee's tried to log in 2 times. I technically wouldn't lock him out yet, but you'll see if somebody's over your threshold, click on the user, and click reset user, and that'll let them log back in. All right, now we'll sort of put all that together and go through how to create a user and then give it team access, a security profile, and set it up with some roles. Teams and security are not required. Just out of the box, there's the sort of kind of like a team that's called everyone. If all the records are owned by everyone, then that's fine. You can just leave it like that. And you don't need to use the teams, and then everyone by default has read-write access for that everyone. And the users will at least need one role, generally the standard role. Otherwise, if they don't have any roles, they give them permissions to view accounts, view contacts, whatever. They log in, most of the screen will just be blank. I mean, they'll just see the colors really. That's about it. All right, we'll go into the user area, and up here, administration, add user. I'm going to be adding a network user. That's a named license. So anybody with one of those can log into the system at any time. An optional license type that can be purchased as a concurrent user. So you could have 2 concurrent licenses. I mean, you could create 50 unique users that are concurrent, but only 2 of those users can be logged into the system at any one time. In order for someone else to log in, one of those users has to log out. But network is a named license, so they can always log into the system, and it shows here that we have 6 more users that we can create. If you have users set up, again, you're using teams and security roles and other options in the system, you can create a new user from an existing user, and it'll copy all their settings over, so you don't have to go through and set all of that up. And you can also make template type users, which have all that information in them. And same sort of thing, it creates them and sets all those defaults, like what team they're on, what access they have in that team. But we'll just go ahead and make one from scratch here so we can go through everything. And username, just the login that the user is going to use to get into the system. Name, just their actual name. And then same user type, you can change. If you accidentally created network and you wanted to do concurrent, you can switch that here. And at some point, whenever that user, if the user leaves or is no longer using CRM, you'd come into this user page and change them to a retired user. That means they can't log into the system anymore. They no longer use up a license. They're not going to show up on any user drop-downs in the system, so you can't assign a record to them. You can't actually delete a user in the web client, which is good. You would never want to delete a user, just retire them. Okay, and so in this upper area here, that's the username and the name are the only 2 required fields. You can fill in whatever else here. And in this employee tab that you want. And this can be used in different ways within the system, but none of this is actually required. Okay, so we'll go into the team membership here. And again, the teams control what records a user can see. So unless all of your records are owned by everyone, we'll need to give this user a few teams so that they can see what they need to. We'll go ahead and add me to Midwest here. Now I've got this team owner security profile. If we click that, we can change it back to that read write. that we were working with earlier. And you can also set in this client system option, oh, I'm sorry, in the security option. The default, so when you add, if you're adding a user to quite a few different teams, you can set whatever profile they should get when they get added. You can always change it later. But so now anytime I add this user to another team, they'll just by default have this read write. So now it automatically adds them as a read write. And then in the roles area, by default, it'll just put the user in the standard user role. If you've made a custom standard user or something else, you'll need to remove this and add that. We'll go ahead and add that export role that we created. And if you wanted the user to be able to create additional users, do administrative functions, you can give them this administrator role too. And up here, you can change the password. I forget what that default one was, so we'll just change it to password. So now, next time this user logs in, that'll be their password. And if we go ahead and log in, we can see that we have access to see everything. And because we gave it that security role that we had modified, the user cannot change the main phone number. Alrighty, any questions on just sort of users in general? Okay, we'll move into taking a look at groups. Groups are a collection of records. Generally, they're conditional. You add a set of conditions, like this field is this value, and that's what causes them to show up in that group. Now, you can also make ad hoc groups, which are just pick a certain number of records. It's a static set of records that'll always be in that group. And we'll take a look at the group favorites checkbox, which was introduced somewhat recently. I can't remember exactly when, but helps you organize what groups show up along the top in your system. And we'll also look at just creating a quick group to show differences in sort of creating a group and also using filters. And then we'll show a feature that's come out in this most current update of Infor, where you can more easily create something like a show me a list of my activities for the week. I'll just do a quick group overview here. So along the top here, as I'm sure most of you know, are the groups that show your collections of records. Right here is the all accounts. We see every record in the system because it has no particular conditions on it. If we wanted to say or see just, let's say, groups that are in the state of Illinois, I've already got one in here, but if we edit that, we can see what makes that up. And the properties, just the name of the group that displays at the top. And the conditions are that since we're in the accounts, if we click here, these are all the fields available in the account. But we want to see records that are in the state of Illinois. So we'll go down here into address. Scroll down, find state. You can drag it in there or double click it. And here's where you'd say, I want to see everything in the state of Illinois. And then anytime anybody opens this group, that's the records that it'll show you. Because that one's fairly simple, instead of creating a group for that, we can just stay in the all accounts group here. And along the right, we have these filters. So if I just temporarily want to see everybody in Illinois, go ahead and click that. State, Illinois, and it filters down our group here for just those records. But it doesn't permanently alter the group. You can clear that filter out and it'll go back to what it was. All right, so yeah, that's just a simple quick overview of the groups themselves. Let's go through one that might be kind of useful for your users. And part of this is new for this most current update of Infor CRM 8.4, update 04. And here you can actually make custom groups for the activities entity, which previously was not possible. So if users in general want to see what their activities are for this week, go up here and we'll create a new group. The name field is relatively short. If you need a longer one, you can add it in this display here. So we'll go into the conditions, and we want any activity that has a start date of this week. Find the start date field, either drag it in or double click it. So in this update, they've added these conditional parameters, which are kind of nice. Previously, and I can show you that in here very quickly. This is a previous version, like a few updates back. If you wanted to make an activity group, you couldn't really make an activity group. You could make, basically here, we'd make a contact group, bring in some activities for those contacts. In order to get the, actual this week, you could say, within the last 7 days, but that's always a rolling 7 days. To actually do this week, you actually have to come up with a relatively complicated and awkward SQL statement that you'd have to put into, the activity ID and this group. And if you wanted it to be next week, you'd actually have to modify this so that it's finding the dates for next week. Now in this version, they've added these parameters, so we can actually say, click this use value as literal. And they've got these options that you can choose from that just automatically do that date range. So we'll say this week. And we can also restrict it. So we want to, we want to share this with every user. We don't want to make a group for each user. So we'll add another variable here under user ID. Same thing, we'll click this use value as literal. And there's this colon user ID. So that just means whoever is the logged in user, it's only going to show the users that are assigned, the activities that are assigned to that user. That way we don't have to make, one group of the activity or the user ID is equal to this person and to that person, and then make 20 different groups to share out to 20 different users. We'll go, we've got this group. Now we see that I've got 3 activities here that start today. And if I had, one yesterday or one tomorrow, it would show up in here too. And this is just showing those where the leader is the administrator, since that's who I'm logged in as. Now, if we want to give this to everybody in the system, we'd right click on the group up here. We can go to share. Hit everyone. You could also share it with a particular, set of users if only these people would want to see it. But this was something that we think would be useful for everyone, so we'll just hit that. And OK. Now that's been shared out with all of the users. When they log in, they won't see it up here because there's this option called Group Favorites. So if anything's unchecked, if anything is not checked here, it won't show up along the top, just so you can only show the ones that are relevant to you. Now, if you've just shared it out, by default, it won't be checked, and so the user won't see it. They can easily go in here and check it. But if you want it to show up for all of them, so they don't have to do that, in case they've forgotten that's where that is, or they don't even know that you've shared it with them. We've got also in the administration area, the group manager. And this lets you control all the groups that have been made by the administrator or other users. And this owner here, this is who created it. Well, let's go into the activity area. This My Activities this week, that's the one I just made. And on this right column, this user default, that means that group favorites checkbox will or won't automatically be checked. So if we want everybody to see this automatically, we just go to this toggle user default. Now this is set to yes. So when the user logs in, they should automatically see that group. We'll log in as Lee. Go into activities. No, that automatic didn't work for some reason on that one, but that's what that's supposed to do. Okay, so there's that group that we just created and shared out with all users. And again, because we put that user ID variable in there, now it's because I'm logged in as Lee, it's only showing me the activities that I'm in charge of. Alrighty, and any general group questions from everybody?
Not so far.
All right, the last thing we'll take a look at are the pick lists. Pick lists are the list of values in certain fields in the system. One thing to note, we'll take a look at that, but they're not usually changed all that often, and they, for performance reasons, get cached within the system pretty well. Occasionally, when you make some changes to the pick lists, you may need to have the users clear their browser cache in order to see the changes. You may even have to reset the internet services on the Infor CRM server to get that done a little more quickly. Just note that we'll knock everybody out of the system for a few seconds, and they'll have to log back in. Let's open an account here. So again, pick lists are generally in these drop downs. So let's say industry here. The pick list is all the list of values in here. Let's say we need to add something to the industry field. We'll go into the administration area, pick lists. They're not broken down by entity. They're generally named, especially the out-of-the-box ones are named pretty easily for whatever you need to find. Something like type exists under an account and under a contact. So on the account level, it's named account type. Industry that we're looking at is only in the account field, so it's just called industry. So we'll open up the pick list for that. And here we see all the values that are actually in that list, as well as a few options for how the list is set up. Well, let's say we want to add manufacturing to that list. And here you can test the list to see what values are in there. So that's not in there at that point. So we just click this add button. And in general, we won't cover that in this, but there's different things that can be done with this code value. In general, just put text is what actually shows up to you, just for reasons. Put the same value in the code box as well. Order, this list is alphabetical. If you don't have that option on, you can set the order in which the items appear. So 1 is the first one, 2 would be the second one. This is just 20 is the next one, so what it's automatically doing. But since this field is set to show them alphabetically, that doesn't really matter. Filter is used for, something we're not going to go over on this either, is how you can, a value in the list will change based on something else. And then language, you can set the language that this item should show up. So this one's just English. We don't have any other language settings set up, but you could, put a value in here for if the user logs in and their language setting is Spanish, this is going to show up. If it's English, this will show up. If it's French, that value will show up. So it's gone ahead and added that list here. And if we test the list, it's now showing up there. And you can also change properties of the pick list. Some of these, like this industry one, is set on the field on the form itself. So that's something that would have to be changed in a customization area. If it isn't alphabetical and you want it to be, you can do this, apply options to web, and then that will change whatever list you're on to be alphabetical in the web client. If we go ahead and log in as our user, and go to that industry pick list. We see that that manufacturing is now in the list. If this user had been logged on, I'm using it sort of the incognito type mode where it sort of clears, it doesn't do the cache the same way. But if a user was logged into the system and you just added that value, they may need to definitely log out, log back in, or they may need to clear their cache just to get that to show up. All right, and that is all for my sort of general quick overview of some administration items in the system there. Anybody have any questions on any of this?
Or, of course, anything else that's related to these things that you have questions about for your Infor instance. We have a few minutes still that we can cover those. While we wait to just see if anybody thinks of anything that they want to jump into, I just want to mention, as administrators, you are the closest connection to your Infor instance. You know what's going on with it behind the scenes, and you know firsthand maybe what's missing, what could be helpful for you to do your job better, or for your teams to maximize a solution. So if you have concerns or you know you need to make a shift with your Infor instance, talk to us. We're your consultant. We want to support you. So open up a conversation about what you're struggling with, and we'll offer our best advice. And, maybe that's that your teams need some more training. Maybe there's some add-ons or integrations that would add value or help you execute things that you're not currently able to execute. But we can uncover that through those sorts of conversations. So for those of you who aren't familiar, you should be, hopefully. Megan Dries is your customer success manager, and she would be the person to reach out to about that. I'm done with my spiel. If anybody has a question, you can go ahead. Bueller. Bueller.
That's reference.
Just as a reminder, I will make sure you get this recording and the slide deck. And I'll include Megan's email in that follow-up as well in case anything else comes up, or like I said, if you have things that you want to talk to us about, we can get on a call with you and kind of work through what you're struggling with. But in general, I'd just like to say thanks to Trevor for doing this for us today. And we appreciate the time. We hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. And we thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, everybody.